Hello, co-journeyers, and welcome back to The Truth So Help Me Good. I am your host, Barbara Landry, and together we continue to explore some of the bigger questions about this journey we call life. Today, my special guest, Karen Olson, is the founder and CEO emeritus of Family Promise. She has dedicated her life to transforming the present and futures of homeless and low-income families. Karen has rallied more than 1 million volunteers nationwide, fostering an extensive network of support for the vulnerable. Also, because of all the efforts of her volunteers, the organization has been able to assist over 1 million people experiencing homelessness. Before her transition into the realm of social advocacy, Karen demonstrated her leadership prowess as a manager at Warner Lambert. Her leap into the world of nonprofits truly underscores her compassionate spirit and steadfast determination. Karen's efforts have been duly recognized, and she has received numerous awards. Some of them include President George H.W. Bush, honoring her with the prestigious annual Points of Light Award, and the New Jersey Governor's Pride Award, recognizing Karen's remarkable social service contributions. It is an honor to have her join us today to talk about her recent memoir, Meant for More: Following Your Heart and Finding Your Purpose. Welcome, Karen.
Hey, Barbara, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
I'm really honored to have you here today to talk about your wonderful life and your wonderful book. In your book, you really literally provide a blueprint for changing the lives of people through empathy, kindness, and compassion. From the beginning, you say in your book that the purpose is to speak to the profound personal healing that happens when we act from our own innate kindness. You point to your own childhood challenges as having cultivated your own empathy and compassion for others. Can you describe for us some of those challenges?
I had an idyllic childhood. I lived in Darien, Connecticut, which is an affluent suburb. And my childhood in the 50s was just playing with the neighborhood children, kick the can, hide and go seek, tag, going to the beach with my mother. She would drive the neighborhood children to the beach. She loved the beach, and we all loved her. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful childhood until suddenly, when I was 12, my mother uh, died. She had a tragic, sudden, unthinkable death. And I had nothing to prepare for that. You know, if someone has cancer, maybe the time is short or whatever. But all of a sudden, I went to school one day and came back, and she had died. And so that left a hole in my heart, particularly because I was not that close to my dad. At the time, he was an alcoholic. He later recovered and led a wonderful, wonderful life, and we became close. But at that time, I felt all alone, and the pain was so severe that at night I would cry myself to sleep hugging a stuffed white cat that had a rubbery smiley face. And that cat, like the cat, was my companion. And after a short 2 months, through my tears and hugging that cat, the cat's face disappeared. That just gives you an idea of how horrible it was at that time. But there was a silver lining that I got from all that. And that was, I knew what hurt was, and I didn't want anyone else to hurt. And so, for instance, my neighborhood, there was a boy across the street who was dying of cancer. His skin was all yellow and he was frail and talked a lot. I tried to play tennis with him. I also volunteered at the local hospital I was a candy striper, and I was also president of the Future Nurses Club in my high school. It's all to tell you that I was bent towards helping people. So I went from this joyous, carefree childhood, having this urge to help people and make a difference. I wanted to become a nurse. I thought was going to be my way of helping. I had a stepmother, and she had been a nurse, and she told me, Karen, I was a nurse. You don't have the grades to become a nurse. And she persuaded my father not to send me to nursing school. My grades were not that bad, but I studied hard and got an A in chemistry and biology, which were prerequisites for nursing school. I also visited St. Luke's Hospital, New York City, and knew that that's where I wanted to go to nursing school. So she persuaded my father not to send me to nursing school. Just like that, my dreams were shattered.
Mm.
That road was blocked, or so I thought. So I pivoted and I studied business administration and got a degree in that. And then later, I became a consumer promotions manager for Warner Lambert. And I was developing consumer sweepstakes and couponing events for products like Schiff razors and Listerman mouthwash. I enjoyed the job, it was a creative and I enjoyed working with my peers, but it was a far cry from offering comfort to those who needed it. Then one day, fate intervened. I was on my way to a meeting in New York City. I was about to pass this homeless woman who I had seen before, now in New York City at that time. It's hard to walk a city block without seeing someone who was homeless, but I walked by them fast, averting my eyes in the other direction. But this time, seeing this woman sitting outside the Grand Central Station on a crate, and I had seen her before, for some reason, I just dashed across the street and I got her a sandwich, a ham and cheese sandwich, and an orange juice. And when I came back, I gave her the sandwich. She said, thank you. God bless you. I haven't eaten since yesterday. And she took my hand and I took her hand in mine. And at that point, I realized I had crossed an invisible line. I learned her name. Her name was Millie. I learned a little bit about her life. She was clearly a homeless woman, but she had been somebody's wife, somebody's mother. Had two children. She asked a little bit about my life, and I shared. And then I said, "Well, you really got to be to my meeting." And so I left, and I could tell you that really all I could think about was Millie and that interaction. So my two sons, Brad and Doug, who were 10 and 12, and they had the open hearts of children. And Doug said to me, Mom, let's go back into New York and find more people like Millie. So we did, and we made 25 sandwiches, and we decided we'd go to Central Park. So we roller skated around Central Park and gave a sandwich to anyone who we thought could use a sandwich. And clearly there were people that certainly looked like they were homeless, and they were glad to receive the sandwich. And I have to say that giving a sandwich was our way of saying we cared. But then we saw that a lot of people who were experiencing homelessness congregated in Port Authority bus terminal. And so then a few weeks later, we made 75 sandwiches and brought them into the city. but we focused on Port Authority bus terminal. We saw that anybody sitting on a bench was not waiting for their bus. It was that they were homeless.
Yeah.
And we did that on Sunday evenings, about every 2 weeks. We got to know people by name.
Wow. So I'm going to stop you there and back up a little bit because I know that everything sort of happened from there. But I want to go back because I have a question, and was really curious about this when reading your book. Given the fact that we all experience challenges, I mean, I don't think there is anybody walking this planet who hasn't experienced some challenge. And if kindness is truly innate, which I don't necessarily disagree with at all, what do you believe gets in the way of people showing more kindness and compassion to others? Because certainly not everybody does. Not enough people do.
Well, I think there's a fear sometimes of their kind words may not be well received. Or we all live in our own worlds, and we're just fearful to reach out to others sometimes. Are you talking about
Yeah.
people who are homeless?
Yes.
Or you
Yes. Just in general, having more empathy, kindness, and compassion for others in general, but certainly as it relates to the homeless. In fact, you had an experience shortly after you lost your mother, with your grandmother in New York City, where you were with her and passed a
Right.
homeless person. Can you
Yeah.
describe what your reaction was to that experience and what your grandmother's reaction was and why you think they were different? Tell us about that.
Okay. Well, that was when I was around a little more than 12. And I would go into New York City to see my grandmother, who was my mother's mother. And on her block, there was a man. We didn't have the word homeless in our vocabulary yet. She called him a bum, but he had a coat that was falling off and shoes that were worn, and he was hunchbacked, and he carried 2 shopping bags, one on either arm, seemingly filled with his life's possessions. And he would walk on 112th Street. My grandmother lived at 112th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. At the end of 112th Street was the Cathedral St. John the Divine. A few steps, 12 steps, and he would put down his bags and turn around to St. John the Divine and look up with prayerfully with his 2 hands and mumble something, and then would pick up the bags and continue 12 steps. Well, he was clearly in need. He clearly in need, and I wanted to do something to help. And I said, Gaga, that's what I called my grandmother. Can we get him some gloves, or let's get him something to eat? And she said, no. People like that choose to be that way. Sometimes even have hundreds of dollars packed in their bags.
And in fact, you talk about in your book that there about the many complexities and misconceptions around homelessness and the fact that it includes a very diverse population. Can you tell us about what are some of those misconceptions that we have as a
Yes.
society? Yeah.
Well, we see people who are on the street and lying on a subway grate or pushing a shopping cart with other belongings in the city or rummaging through the trash can. We obviously see them and we call them homeless. But who we don't see are people who are the working poor. And while you see an obviously homeless person, you pass by a mother who's pushing her 2-year-old in a stroller, and they're homeless, but you don't identify them as homeless. 35% of all those who are homeless are members of families. In fact, according to HUD, there are 250,000 homeless people, but according to others who do research, like the Department of Education, they capture children who are homeless, but living with their parents in cars, for instance, and their number is closer to 3 million. So the range is 250,000 to 3 million. I know that it's closer to 3 million. So there's a whole invisible population of people who are homeless who we don't see. And the root cause of homelessness is a lack of affordable housing. People earning low wages and they just can't afford housing. And if they can, an unforeseen bill can tip the cart for them and they can become homeless. So it's always a juggle of how do I pay the rent? Do I pay for electricity, food? Do I celebrate my child's birthday? And so the root cause is really poverty, and homelessness is a symptom. But then there are many pathways to becoming homeless. You may get evicted from your apartment, you lose your job, mental illness, physical illness, all kinds of things that can precipitate you from.
Yes. Yes. So you have made the issue of homelessness the fulfillment of what you believe to be your destiny. And can you pick up where you left off, where you and your sons were making sandwiches, and then you got this idea, this inspiration to build this network that you have done full of volunteers? Tell us a little bit about the history of.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I was volunteering in New Jersey, decided to find out what was happening in my own community. And there I met homeless families and I learned their stories. And I thought, gee, does the community know? And if they knew, would they want to help? Because for us, where we were living, it's a commuter town, and people identified homelessness for those that they saw in New York City. So I thought the first step had to be awareness. So I planned a conference on family homelessness, and I invited the religious community and the community at large. And there they heard from Bob Hayes, the founder of the National Coalition for the Homeless, heard from Wendy, who was his mother who lived in a suburban community. And because she was made to walk between the shelter she stayed at, she would have to leave at 7:00 in the morning and come back about 6. She was pregnant and gave birth prematurely, and the baby died. So all of that enlightened people to the issue of family homelessness. But at the conclusion of the meeting, I asked people there, I said, how many of you are willing to come back to a meeting to plan how we can respond to what we've heard today? And almost virtually every hand went up. It was 200 people. So right there, that shows you compassion is alive and well.
Yes, yes, yes. So on that note, in a world that continues to be filled with people in need, and the homeless problem is just becoming worse and worse with the unavailability of affordable housing, what advice can you give that might help people cultivate more empathy and compassion and desire to help others? And what action, how do they get started? I think there are lots of people that want to help. There's so many people in need and so many areas that need support. It's overwhelming. So how do you go from wanting to help to actually doing something to put that into action?
Okay. You could volunteer one of the nonprofits in your community, a shelter, a soup kitchen, or other cause. You can also just reach out on your own to people. Have to be with the intention of building a large nonprofit. Offer a meal to your sick neighbor. Offer to pick up the newspapers on your neighbor's porch when they're away. Or I remember one time I was on a business trip and I came home. Everybody is going to be filled with snow because we had a major snowstorm. And to my surprise, my driveway was shoveled, the walkway, the porch. And when I got to my door, I saw a note wedged in the door, and I opened it and read it, and I didn't know that well. And you said, I hope I didn't mess things up, and I knew your way. So I shuffled your driveway and walkway. And I was just so overwhelmed by his act of kindness. I didn't know him that well. So that note just kept resurfacing. I couldn't bear to throw it away because it meant so much. Now, he probably thought that was just a small something he could do. But to me, his kindness was overwhelming. So the point is, it doesn't have to be large. You
Right.
look where the need is, right where you are, or you can volunteer at an established agency.
And
There's
never,
also something called
go ahead.
the Volunteer Action Center, which is in most communities. You can look as well.
So never underestimate the power of any act of kindness is what
No,
I'm hearing from you. So what is it that you hope that readers will take away from your book?
I hope that they'll be inspired by the many stories in the book, and that they'll identify with some of the people in the book who have taken action. I hope it will inspire them to take action in their own communities. And, today you hear so much horrible news and on TV and so on, but people are kind and good. We just don't share that enough. And this book, I hope, will inspire people.
I think so. You are an inspiration, and your book is full of inspiring stories, and your own story, and your belief in the goodness of people. So I so appreciate you writing it, and I strongly encourage people to read it. It's hugely inspiring and just what the world needs today more than ever. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara. And I want to say that all the proceeds from my book will go to Family Promise, the organization that I founded will help homeless families.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. And what's the best way to get your book, by the way?
At Barnes & Noble, Amazon,
Okay.
bookshop.com. And they can also go to my website, KarenOlsonAuthor.com.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Karen.
Oh, you're welcome. It was my pleasure.
Keep up the good work, and we will all do the same.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
Take care.